Hello, everyone. Good day, and welcome to WIF Academy. We understand that exams can be super stressful time of the year, especially now with so much being online. And we've curated this event so that we can help as much as possible. To proceed, I would appreciate if our student speakers could now share with us their experience with exams and any advice that they may have for us.
I can start.
Yeah.
I have quite a few tips, but I'll choose like the top two, three tips that I think are very important. First being, students should not be blinded by the fact that the exams are now open book and online, because often students just rely way too much on their notes and they don't really prepare much for the exams in terms of actually memorizing the information or understanding the concept. But you should use the fact that these exams are open book, use it to your advantage by making really concise and smart cheat sheets for quick reference, because you're very likely to face a shortage of time if you end up reading through your notes. So don't rely way too much on your notes. Don't make lengthy, literally textbooks for yourselves that you think you'll be able to refer to during your exams. You really wouldn't get the time. Secondly, keep your laptop on 100% charge and work on autosave mode, either on Word document connected to your OneDrive or Google Doc. Last year, during one of my exams, in the last 10 minutes right before submitting my paper, my laptop crashed and an entire section, which was worth 70%, got erased and it wasn't saved. And this was all in the last 10 minutes, so it was very, very pressurizing. Luckily, that section was all numerical based, so I had pictures of the questions that I had done, and I was able to put them back on the slide on my document. But that's not always the case, and I did end up missing on 15% of my paper or something of that sort, simply because of such a silly error. So always keep saving your document or work on autosave mode. And I think lastly would be um, yeah, like unlike your written exams where you can actually write till the very last second, that's not the case in online exams, and that's why you might end up just, not saving enough time to actually click pictures, scan your pictures, upload onto your document, and see the flow of your pictures and your entire paper. So make sure you leave at least 30 minutes before the deadline of your paper to be able to click all your pictures, and make sure to number your pictures and your questions so that your flow is there intact and you don't have to spend a lot of time actually figuring out what goes after what, and then upload it onto your document and check whether everything is correct, and then you're ready to work on your document if you have 5-10 minutes extra after that. So yeah, that would be my top three tips for exams.
Thank you, Darsha. We'd also love to hear from Sahin if he has any input as well.
Sure. So I believe Darsha did add on or didn't meant talk about the online exam tips, and Shubh will touch the same. But I also have a few tips, which I'll just touch upon two tips, which I wish I knew earlier, because I got to know this pretty late with experience. It'll be first that before you prepare for an exam, do make sure that you go through the question paper of the exam before you start preparing, because that's a mistake I did for one or two modules, and I realized late. Because it could be that you're studying everything from week 1 to week 10, and at the end you see the question paper and you actually have options where you could have actually avoided studying 2 or 3 weeks if you wanted. So do make sure that you go through the question paper, you have an idea whether it's essay type or numerical. And second, I would suggest is that once you're done with that, I would say it's important to actually take help from your friends as well. So it could be that you have a lot of lectures to go through, and 1 hour lecture usually takes 1.5 hours to get done with. But your friend who's already studied that might be able to explain that to you in 20 minutes. So make sure you do that as well, whether it's online or offline. And also in terms of using the book for your exams, which I feel every module does suggest. Honestly saying, I didn't use book for all my modules. I felt lecture and seminar material and I guess working hours were enough to prepare. But I would say for essay type questions, I used the book for essay type questions and I scored well in them because I was able to add points from the book. So if not for numerical papers or theory papers, I would say for essay type, do make sure you go via the book and the chapters and try to relate it as much as possible to your paper. So that's pretty much it. Taking help from your friends, using the book for essay type, and yeah, going through the question paper before preparation. I feel these are top three tips I could give. And yeah, moving on to Shubh if you'd like to add something.
Yeah, from my experience of giving exams, the first tip that I'd like to give is use the dictate feature on Word documents when you are writing these essay type answers. So I am not really good at typing, and I usually take a lot of time to type out things. So I really found this dictate feature extremely helpful during the business law examination, because in the business law examination or any essay type question, for example, you have to write a big chunk of paragraph, like 1,000 words or so, in a really short span of time when you're actually under a lot of time pressure. And especially if you have multiple questions like in finance modules where you have to write numerical examples while at the same time a long answer question, the dictate feature can be extremely handy, because you can finish that same answer in like 5 minutes compared to 10 minutes of typing. There might be a few grammatical mistakes which you might have to edit, so always check your paper before submitting it. Ensure that there are no grammatical errors or any, because in the dictate feature they might misspell a few things, they might not put it in the right context in the way you set it out. So just check your paper before submitting. Second, I'll also like to mention, do not panic if you're not able to submit your exam on time due to any technical error, your laptop crashing, or whatever external reason might be affecting your paper. This happened to me last year because when I was writing my paper, suddenly the electricity went down and my paper wasn't saved and stuff like that. So I wasn't able to submit the paper on time. But as soon as you are able to get the electricity back or whatever, you're able to submit your paper, just submit it as soon as possible. Do not delay it just because you're panicking, and submit a mitigating circumstance after that, explaining your situation. The WBS team will take your situation into consideration and they will award you the mark accordingly. But just try doing that as soon as possible. I submitted my mitigating circumstance like just after my paper got done. So like, do not keep a time gap between that. And thirdly, I'd like to say that this is not related to the exam, but it's more related to the preparation aspect of the exam. When you're studying for a particular exam, first I recommend go through the lectures, then the seminars, then the external readings, and then the past papers. I'd also like to focus on the fact that seminars might not always have content which was covered in the lectures. Seminars have content which is taught to you in the seminars, and it might not be covered anywhere in the lecture. So do not be shocked if you see a new formulae or something which you have not seen in the lecture in the seminar, and it can be assessed in the exam as well. And I took a lot of time to understand this in my first year, and I was really shocked when I used to see a particular formula which I can't find anywhere on the lectures, but it was there taught to us in the seminar. So just keep an eye out for that when you all are preparing. So yeah, these are the three things which I'd like to recommend for the preparation and examination.
Thank you, Shubh. Thank you, speakers, for your valuable insight. Next slide, please. Here we have links to all the resources that our panelists recommend be made use of. And we will also be putting the same onto the chat box for your convenience. So please go through them. The question is, does your respective department have a 24-hour window for the examinations being held this year?
So last year we did have that, but this year, from my understanding and after speaking to a few people who are on the SSLC team, we're most likely to not have a 24-hour window, and it's going to start at a specific time and end at a specific time. But again, this is all speculation. We haven't been given any formal official announcement by the WBS team, and it might differ from module to module. But that's what I've heard, that certain numerical exams, especially management accounting, because I've confirmed with the professor herself, will be starting at a fixed time and will need to be submitted within a time gap of 2 to 3 hours.
Our next
A stressful day of studying, and always use their help as well. So in our first year, what we used to do is after dinner, all of us we used to study together and like solve each other's doubts, solve seminars together. And some amount of group work is always beneficial, and leave some amount of time for group work specifically. Dedicate a particular hour or so in your day for group work so that you can discuss your ideas, you can explain your concepts and see if your friend is understanding that. And that at the same time not only reinforces your friend's knowledge, but at the same time it allows you to see if you are able to explain the concept really well, which you need to do in the exam. So yeah, that's one thing which I recommend.
Thank you, Shubh. Really appreciate the advice on how to keep a good temperament while preparing for stressful exams. So here's another popular one. How important are first year exam results when it comes to applying to summer internships? Would I have to submit any transcript term-wise?
All right, so I'll take the question if Darsha and Shubh are fine with that. So in terms of your first year marks, with respect to internship, the minimum is 2-1 for almost all internships. It's very important that you get a minimum of 2-1. However, if and also first is recommended, like obviously if you get a first, that's better. However, I know many people who got a 2-1 or a low 2-1 and they got internships as compared to people who got a first and didn't get internships. So a minimum 2-1 is compulsory. That is important. Focus on that. In terms of the transcript, I'd say they didn't ask my transcript when I applied for the summer internship. It might be different for other companies. But yeah, they did ask for my marks. However, they didn't request me to add any transcript. As well as, at least for my this time, like first, it doesn't have much weightage. So for internship, what I'd suggest is, and if you have applied for Spring Weeks, you know they actually focus on non-academic things as well. So do ensure that you hone those skills when applying. But yeah, do get a 2-1. And if you can't get a first, don't be disappointed or don't be discouraged. I still say you have a very good chance of getting an internship.
Thank you, Sahin. Thank you for that. We'll now move on to some more course-specific questions. So our first question is, as finance is one of the most important modules, is there any particular way to study for the module and approach this exam?
I can start with that, and Sahin and Shubh can add on to it. So how I do my preparation for finance modules is obviously firstly go through all the lectures, and I am someone who likes to make notes when I'm studying, so I always make written notes, especially for finance modules, because there's a mix of theory, concepts, graphs, and formulae. After I'm done with all the lecture notes, what I do is I make a cheat sheet which has all the formulae from week 1 to week 10, and I segregate it week wise. So all my formulae are there on one sheet, and compiled notes in a book. And then I start solving seminars. So while I solve seminars, I usually keep the answer sheet right next to it. So if I'm not able to solve something, I look at the answer sheet instead of wasting a lot of time trying to solve it myself, at least during the first time. So I actually understand the concept and I don't end up confusing myself by overthinking the question. So yeah, that's how I go about my preparation. And then of course at the end, solve the past papers, because that really gives you a clear understanding as to where you stand and which topics you need to brush up on, and which formulae are very popular in your paper, something that you might want to memorize and not be too relied on your notes. So that's how I go about my preparation.
Thank you.
Also,
Thank you, Darshan.
yeah, I'd just like to add one more point. For finance modules, you'll find, as I said, if you just go with the question paper earlier, it could be that you have 5 questions out of which you only need to attempt 3. So do make sure you know that, because if you're running out of time or you have 2 exams on the same day, and so you could just focus on like those specific questions. So as I said, like work smart instead of hard, I would say, in these kind of situations. You can be covered with 3 or 4 topics really well as compared to covering 5 to 6 topics. So I feel that's one benefit you get when you're attempting a finance question.
Thank you. Shubh, any input?
Yeah, so in terms of finance modules, what I've realized is that seminars are really, really important, because in lectures they will just brush through the concept really quickly. But in seminars, when you actually try to put that formula to a test, you will realize that its implications are totally different from what it might have been like obvious at that particular point of time. So really focus on seminars. And if you're not able to understand the seminar, sit with your professor or your flatmates or anybody from your course basically, and try solving seminars, especially because those are exactly the kind of questions which you might get in the past papers. But there have been instances where like seminar questions have literally been picked and put in the final exam paper. So just be really ready with your seminar question for finance module.
Thank you, Shubh. Thank you, Sahin. Moving on, would you recommend watching important lectures over and over again?
I personally wouldn't. I think when I make my notes, I make it pretty self sufficient. So once I'm done with the lecture, I am most likely to not go back to it unless when I'm going through my notes, I don't understand the concept. But of course, I think this really depends from person to person and how confident you are with that particular concept, or how detailed are your notes. So it might differ from person to person, but personally I wouldn't rewatch a lecture over and over again and waste time on it.
Okay, thank you. Sahin and Shubh, any input?
Uh, yeah, I just add, like, as the trust said, it depends from person to person. And in my case, what I usually do is I print out lecture slides, I make notes, but instead of the entire lecture, I would say there have been one or two parts where I felt like, okay, when I revise this, I know I might have to refer to the lecture again because this is a big topic, this is a heavy topic. So for that time, I do make a note that, okay, this is the timing of the lecture which I need to watch, so it's going to be easier for me. So there have been times when I'm revising like 1 or 2 days before the exam, and it's been 1 month after I'm revising. Yeah, there have been times when I go back to the lecture, but not the entire lecture, just a specific part or a topic. And yeah, but mostly your notes should be self-sufficient in that way.
Okay, okay, thank you. Moving on, are we expected to research new resources during the exam and then reference it?
I guess it totally depends on like the module you're studying. For example, like for economics for strategy last year, we were given a really open-ended question. So for that, like it's good to have an external source of knowledge as well, other than what is taught to you in the course. But you need to like link that external like reading to the current coursework. It's not that you can just like keep on citing external readings without linking it to the current coursework. So primary focus should always be what has been taught to you, but it's always better to connect it to something which hasn't been taught to you and just say like, we've been taught this, we are connecting it to this, and this is how we are willing to answer this particular question. So a combination of both is always ideal, I'd say.
Okay, thank you, Shubh. Moving on, we've already discussed financial modules, but is there any other way to revise for other modules?
Mm, I think for business law, because there are so many cases, and for each case, there's so much description, and then there are what the judgment was made at the end of the case. There's so much to memorize. So the way I went forward with business law was, again, firstly, I made my compiled notes for the entire module, and then what I did was, for finance, how I make a cheat sheet with all the formulae. For business law, I made a cheat sheet with all the cases, and how I went about that was just the case name, the year, whatever, and in one line what the case was about and what was held at the end of the case. So by held, I mean what was the judgment passed at the end of the case. So that was a very short, concise way of putting forward every case. So when you're going through your case study during your exam, and you know that this is the relevant topic, I just don't know which case or what was exactly like held during the case, you can just go back to your cheat sheet instead of your compiled notes and just see which case. And because during your exam you don't really need to get way too detailed with the cases being taught, all you need to know is which case you need to refer to draw a parallel, and what was held at the end of the case. So that's all you need, and that's why a cheat sheet with just that is enough.
Okay, perfect. Any input from our other student speakers? Okay,
About it.
moving on. What is the year-wise weightage like?
So for me, right now it's 50-50. So second year is 50% and year three is 50% to my course weightage. So my year one didn't count. And that's why, as Shubh said, we were more focused on societies and other things in my first year. But yeah, that's how it's for my course.
Okay, um, thank you. So thank you for answering our
Okay.
questions.
My questions are primarily for Shubh, because I study management. The first one is regarding the finance modules that we can pick for our second year. How much maths is involved, and is it more like, related to like equity and stock markets, or is it actually like the fundamentals of the business's finances, like, the balance sheet and things like that?
Okay, so I'll start off by saying that everything that you study in year one, all the modules related to the statistical modules or the basic finance module, the finance of year one, everything is going to be linked in your year two and year three finance modules. So you're going to have to combine some knowledge of statistics with that of your accounting knowledge as well as the equity knowledge. So it's everything is going to be interlinked. So it's I can't clearly tell you that something is important while something isn't. Basic knowledge of everything is going to be required. Just to give you an example, in our finance 2 module, we had to calculate variances which we were taught in our year 1 statistics module. It is something different for your batch. It was something different for my batch, but the concept remains the same. The statistical modules will teach you the basics of variances, mean variance, and from that we had to calculate a mean variance portfolio, something of that sort. So like your variances are important over there, but at the same time, when you choose modules of finance in year 3, we are expected to know some accounting as well. So to calculate the free cash flow models, and for that you need to have some basic knowledge of accounting as well. So it all gets interlinked, so everything is really important. But I'm pretty sure your year 1 modules prepare you adequately for your year 2 and year 3 finance modules. So it is a steady progression, and you will be really okay with the future finance module if you're like understood the basic concepts really well.
Okay, and just the second question, Darsha, Sayan, feel free to jump in on this one because it's business law related. I've got no background whatsoever in business law, but I'm thinking about it for second year. I just wanted to know how useful it is, how useful you think it is in like contract negotiations. Is it just like theory and writing long essays, or do you think, no, if I take this, it'll actually help me as a potential entrepreneur in contract negotiations?
So I'll start off. I would say it's extremely useful, and just like you, I had no background. I had no idea what it was, and for me, it was compulsory, so it wasn't even an optional one. So I was just ready for whatever comes my way. And believe me, it was one of the most interesting modules. I found it way more interesting than accounting modules. And in fact, I was gonna opt for business law too, which was an optional module in my year two. That's how much I liked it, and it's very useful. However, I didn't call it a heavy module, I would say. And in my year two already had 9 compulsory modules. I don't want to make it too heavy, but I would say definitely do go ahead if you already have some interest. If you already plan to do something with it, definitely go ahead, because I know many people who had no interest and they loved it by the end of it. So yeah, I would suggest definitely go ahead. And if Darsha wants to add something to this.
Yeah, I think as Sahin mentioned, business law was one of the most interesting modules that not just me but most of our cohort really enjoyed. And I don't think any of us had any knowledge with regards to law. And that's why the professors understand this and they teach you from the very scratch, like from the very bottom they teach you. So you don't really need to know anything. And the way the module is taught is so naturally flowing that you will end up really enjoying the module by the end of it. And like most of us, you might end up actually choosing business law too in your next year, like I did. And in terms of actually understanding it, I don't think it should be that difficult, because again the professors understand that you don't really understand the law yet. And I have a friend who was who was also doing accounting and finance, and who is so interested in who was so interested in business law that now she's actually thinking of taking up corporate law after her bachelor's, where she'll do the 1 year, I don't know, LPC, or that one examination that you can take. And even if you don't have a law degree, you can, I think, become a solicitor or something of that sort. So that's how much she enjoyed. So don't worry about coping up with the module. You'll be taught very well.
And just to add on to that, business law has been really, really scoring. How many more people I've spoken to, they've either got a high 2-1 or a first in that module. And as Sahin and Darsha mentioned, it's just really interesting. So it'll actually change your perspective towards how you look at a particular problem. And you can always have a conversation with your law friends and annoy them with some cases. So it's always helpful in that particular way as well.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Kush. Thank you for your question. Thank you, panelists, for answering it. Coming today, and we hope that you feel more prepared for exams after this session. Feel free to reach out to the speakers via LinkedIn as well, which is on the next slide. Please move on to the next slide. Yeah, so here are their barcodes. You can scan this and reach out to our student speakers. In addition, to remind you once again, this event has been recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel for your convenience. As the careers team, we're looking forward to having more successful events in the future and would love for all of you to reach out to us with any feedback or suggestions. Thank you so much to all of you for attending today's session.